everyone. I'm your host, Dominique.
And I'm Christina, and we are the Connected in Glass podcast.
This podcast is meant to be an educational and inspirational podcast about glass art for all listeners. A love of glass art connects people of all walks of life and in all generations. Let us celebrate this by getting to know each other. Each interview will have 3 sections: getting to know this week's artist, diving into more detail about their particular form of glasswork, and going into the deep stuff that isn't usually openly discussed. These are meant to be real-life coffee table discussions about hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We hope that with every episode, you'll be left with a sense of connection, a new perspective, and maybe a boost of creative mojo to tackle your next aspiration.
Today, we're interviewing Chris Sherwin. Chris is a glass artist of 27 years who owns and operates his own studio in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Today, Chris shares with us his perspective on running his own business, the challenges of working alone, and his process of learning social media.
Hey guys! Hi!
Hey, how are you?
Thanks for being with us, Chris.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for throwing this together. What a great idea.
Yeah, so we're really excited to learn more about you, and we just kind of want to jump right in. So tell us about you, where you live, what you enjoy, what you do for a living, kind of working into the story of glass.
Okay, history too, or just kind of me now?
History too.
History too. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to.
Well, my name is Chris Sherwin, and I guess the reason for the conversation is I have a glass studio in Bellows Falls, Vermont, Sherwin Art Glass. And you can find me all over the place, web and social media. I was born and raised in Vermont, Brattleboro, Vermont, grew up in Westminster. I left and came back a number of times, but we're basically here right on the Connecticut River in the Bellows Falls, Vermont, North Walpole, New Hampshire region. I technically live on the New Hampshire side, about a half a mile in. But my house is the last one along the Connecticut River. So pretty close to Vermont still. History. Yeah. So went to school in Vermont. I was not originally a glass person. I went to college for special education down in Southern Connecticut, and really thought I would be a special ed teacher. Out of college, I was a house counselor for a couple of years down in Maryland, running a group home with developmentally disabled adults, and basically started my career in glass when I moved back home in 1993. I had taken an elective in college that was really, other than a friend's parents growing up, my only connection to glass was an elective in college. But that was basically my reason to get back to Vermont, and that allowed me to be back here was in 1993, starting with Simon Pierce. A little backstory into the rest of my life. When I'm not blowing glass, I guess you wanted a little, what else do I do with my time? I really enjoy my family. My daughter's in college in California, where she was born, and you'll hear about why we were there in a little bit. But family is very important to me. I do a lot of hobbies, from playing guitar, disc golf, a lot of outdoor hiking and canoeing, fishing, just time with friends. I brew beer. If you come to the studio, you can see my band space, my brewery space, and my glass blowing space. So it's kind of a threefer if you show up. But, so I want to say first and foremost, I feel very fortunate, and especially in the time since I've been with my wife the last 25 years, I'm very fortunate to have the life that I do. Being self-employed, obviously, as you know, has its ups and downs, but I have a great family life, and that's of utmost importance, especially now. So I guess that's the beginning. Is there anything more you want to know about my non-glassy stuff?
That was pretty great. So let's bring it into glass. So you said you started your first glass experience was in 1993 as an elective in college.
91, actually. I was I graduated high school in 86. I went to Southern Connecticut State University on the New England regional program because they didn't have special ed in Vermont. So I went for in-state tuition. I've always dabbled in various arts and crafts over the years, pottery, wood burning, we like to work with our hands, right? So I've always kind of dabbled. Um, a friend of mine convinced me to try a glass class my senior year as an elective, just for the fun of it. So that was my first experience. I did like it. I wasn't one of those that instantly thought, oh my God, this is life altering. I'm never going to do anything else. I thought, wow, this is pretty cool working with this hot multi stuff, and made a bunch of moldy cobalt blue stuff, that we all get drawn into originally. And my dad still has them, I think. My mom and dad still have those pieces. But, and then I got practical after college. I needed a job. I was a special ed major, so I went with what I knew, and I had an opportunity to be a house counselor down in Maryland. So that was what I did for 2.5 years, but I got pretty fried, pretty burnt out. It was 12 days on, 2 days off, very stressful. And I saw an article in the paper that Simon Pierce was hiring glass blowers and potters, actually. And I had done both. I'm like, oh, wow, I did glass blowing once. Maybe they'll hire me. And sure enough, they did. It was just right place, right time. They had just opened the Windsor facility right off Route 9, exit 91, heavy production mode. And so, again, right place, right time. And I spent a little over 4 years there. And what a great place to learn functional production glass blowing, how it moves, how it works. It's all clear glass, so the mistakes don't get hidden. And the tolerance was fairly tight. You had to be pretty good pretty quickly. So it was a great experience. I worked my way up to a production leader fairly quickly and did that for 4 years. And I probably would have stayed had I not met my wife, or my fiance at the time. Am I rambling too much? You want me to keep going?
No.
Okay. I'm just kind of giving you I'm going to give you to the, kind of where I am, I guess. So I met my wife, and she wanted to go to school to get her grad degree, basically for speech therapy. And we thought, hey, we're still relatively young. Let's have an adventure. And so we looked around places in the country that had both an accredited speech therapy program and glass blowing, and settled on Chico, California, where, if you don't know, Satava Art Glass, Orient and Flume Art Glass, both really well-known glass studios, as well as Glass at the College, gave me pretty much 3 opportunities to hire in and get hired, and a great speech therapy program. So we had checked it out in March. I put applications in at both of the glass studios. We moved out there in July. It was 115 and everything was dead. And I said, what the hell did we just do? I thought it was 70 and green all the time, but it was a little bit of a step back. But I can't say enough about the great time we had out there for about 7 years. I did get hired with Orient and Flume Art Glass, known for their iridescent work, their torchwork style, which is basically the niche, if you will, of what I've continued to try to bring back east. It's a painting with glass method, using canes of glass and a torch to apply decorative techniques in, under, on the surface of the glass. And they were one of the few places in the country that kind of started that technique in the 60s. And I got there with enough experience to be kind of dangerous, and I was a kid in the candy shop for 7 years. It was great, really. So I probably would, again, I was happy there. We had a great time in Chico. Other than the hot summers, the farmers markets year round, I was in a really good place in the company. I liked making everything that we made, but we had the only grandchild on both sides of the family. And so there was quite a bit of pressure to move back home, and that won out. So we came back to this, like I said, Bellows Falls, North Walpole area of Vermont. We're 5 minutes from my parents and a block over from my in-laws. So my daughter grew up basically with her grandparents, which was, again, as I had said earlier, family is very important. And so that was a huge impetus for us doing that. After working for other glass blowers for close to 12 years, I I didn't naively say, hey, I think I'm going to start a glass studio now. But that was my mode of thinking, with the backdrop of I could have gotten hired back at Simon Pierce if I needed to. But that basically got us back home. It took about a year to set up Sherwin Art Glass. And I've been here for 15 years now. So 27 years, give or take.
That was like perfectly laid out. You couldn't have done it better. Okay. So like let's bring that into where you are today. So
Okay.
like you kind of described your style of work a little bit, but maybe you could do that and like give us a visual of your workspace and kind of like how you work. Like I know you work alone often. Typically in the hot shop you work more as a team. But maybe give us an idea of your process, the physical part of your process.
The physical part too. Okay. So starting on my own is overwhelming, and again, Dom, you can attest to that. You basically, it's not just all fun and games and molten glass. There's a huge business side of it, and so when you're starting out, you have, I'm a fairly practical type person, and so it was, what can I, with 12 years of experience, what can I make that will be unique, will sell, in this area? And I pretty much thought, hey, I've been exposed to this style of work that's pretty much a West Coast style. There's nobody really doing it back here. That, I'm not saying it gives me a leg up, but it gives me a base to work with. And so that coupled with production experience from Simon Pierce, that work ethic, that, multiple pieces per day, also leads well into the business side of a glass business, as opposed to, well, I think I'll just come in and play around and hopefully it sells. I kind of went in with that business practicality, and I just started with what I knew. I think I lit the furnace in November of 2005. I just found 3 or 4 of my first pieces that I made, and they were, 2 of them were snowmen, because I had, I was like, all right, it's winter in Vermont. What am I going to make that, somebody might find cute, adorable, and pay for? I've missed pumpkin season, so I was like, I'll make snowmen, So I also thought, okay, I'll be doing paperweights, because there's not a lot of people doing paperweights back here, up here. So that was kind of my method of starting. And I had to lay out the money, obviously, and I got a loan, and through the town revolving loan fund, and I brought some of it into myself. When I do a PowerPoint, a lot of what I say is it was a series of fortunate events, and I really look at it that way. I don't want to say everything's fallen into place, but things have kind of fallen into place. Within a month of moving home, I met a friend, Owen Dodge, that worked for Steven Lundberg out in California, building his equipment. I had no idea on how to build my own equipment. I figured I would end up buying something, but I ended up meeting a guy that could build it and wanted to build a glass studio within literally a month of moving home. And then I found a space that runs on hydroelectric power, all renewable. The beauty of that is a glass blower who usually use a lot of fossil fuels. Again, it couldn't have hit me any harder in the side of the face. I found a building with renewable energy. I found a guy to help me build the equipment. I outlaid the cash, and we built my furnace and basically my whole studio right here I'm looking at the Connecticut River right now. It's pretty sweet. So all of that, I don't know if it was luck or coincidence or whatever you want to call it, meant to be. So all of that kind of leads up to where I am today. And I started out with production that I understood and knew, paperweights. I started doing the animal sculpture. I juried into the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. I juried into the Vermont State Crafts Council, because I knew I didn't want to do all the marketing myself, and I didn't necessarily, as important as family was to me, do a lot of traveling to the shows. So I made the early decision to market myself to galleries that had the same aesthetic, that knew the kind of work that I did, were familiar with the West Coast style of working and could market it, and or marketed locally handmade, handcrafted glass, which I'm jumping around a little bit, but I believe that we're in a really good part of the country for that. People in New England tend to appreciate that. And that, again, was part of the impetus to moving home is because we tend to appreciate that. I buy handmade stuff, for gifts and for myself, and I think a lot of us do. And so that's been extremely helpful, trying to be a craftsman in New England. So that's the route I took, was marketing myself to galleries, allowing them to take their cut, but to market the work, and I could focus on production here at the studio. But I do have a retail space. I have a website. I do a couple of shows per year. So the growth of the galleries that, I started out with a handful, and now it's in the 30s somewhere, galleries and museums. And that's probably the bulk of how I market the work. We'll get into the COVID discussion. I'm sure things have certainly changed, but let me back up just slightly about the body of work, because it's fairly integral to where I am. I started out thinking I'll be doing paperweights and vases, California style torch work, a little bit more of the higher end stuff. But a year after I started, basically that recession in 2007 and 8 hit. And very quickly, the price point dropped a little bit. And what really took off were the animal sculpture and the fruit sculpture that I was doing. And whether it was just, cute and whimsical and everybody likes birds and bears and, pumpkins and lemons and limes and apples and all that, or whether it was a price point, I'm not sure. But the fact that I was already making that work, it became pretty much the bread and butter, and I would say 70% of what I've been doing for the last 15 years, especially the animal sculpture, the cardinals, owls, 4 kinds of bears. That's been, I guess, my niche, and they're fun to do, so it was fine. Let me stop and just see if you have any questions, because I feel like I'm rambling a little.
No, this was just perfect. And that's kind of something that I was wondering, and I guess we'll get into a little bit more of your thought process behind it, but it was cool to hear that you said it's fun to do, because it kind of sounds like you fell into this niche, but it's also something that you enjoy versus being stuck replicating something over and over again that you don't quite like.
Right.
So you're doing pretty good, and I'd like to just kind of let you keep on going.
Okay.
But basically you have your studio space, you're open to the public, you have your gallery, you work out of your electric furnace that runs off of the water. And you mostly work out of your furnace completely, right? You don't light any of your equipment.
Right. I don't have a glory hole or a separate, heating area. And that's why I've steered away from kind of lessons and teaching experiences. I've taken high school seniors over the years, and I can certainly, walk people through experiences. But because I have exposed electric elements and I do work over my 200-pound, clear pot, I tend to be fairly careful. And so I do work by myself. Pretty much that's just how I work. I did have an assistant for a while, and it's nice to do that, to do some of the more handled pieces or some Italian techniques, stemware. But I pretty much built a production line around my own abilities and working by myself. And I lost my initial train of thought, but let me go back to the production part again. I pretty much, every once in a while, there's pieces that you make, and for me, it might be like Christmas ornaments. That is a little bit of I really don't want to make these, but part of my learning process was realizing the technique part of something that you can practice regardless of what you're doing. And you can speak to this, Dom. Every gather of glass teaches you something. And so to not get stuck on I just got to make this ornament that I can make in 8 minutes, but making every gather clean, doing it as efficiently as you possible, bringing yourself a handle, making a nice loop. If nothing else, and I think Wes Fleming was really good about opening my eyes to this about 5 years ago, even making a twisty cane icicle, he makes amazing little insects and with incredible detail. But he warms up every day by doing icicles. And he's like, it's like playing scales if you do music. It's a necessary part of what you're doing. It's building a skill set. And so if there is a piece or two that I'm not necessarily enamored with making that particular day, I'm always from every gather out of the furnace trying to do the best I can with every piece I make. And so you can always break it down to that. Every single gather is important. Every time you add color to your piece is important. Being clean, being on task, paying attention. Glass is not a medium that allows you to be too lackadaisical about it. You have to always be paying attention, or it shows you really quickly what happens if you don't. And so that, coupled with the fact that if you just look around my studio or even my website, I make hundreds of different things. It would be very hard for me to get bored. I think I'm lucky in that I've built I guess, a production line of, it's almost too many things sometimes. I kind of laugh with thinking I should simplify it. But I see similarities in you, Dom. You do all kinds of different, really cool, fun stuff. And so, I break it down to, it could be a lot worse. I could be stuck making one piece all the time, and I don't. I have hundreds of things that I can make, and most of them sell or would sell if I chose to market them. So again, I'm extremely fortunate to have the experiences I had at both Simon Pierce and Orient and Flume, have that production background, have a pretty decent skill set over 27 years of proficiency. And so it really comes down to just doing a good job and trying to have that bit of fun with it, no matter what you're making.
One thing I think that makes your work special, at least from the perspective of a fellow glassblower that also has a furnace, is that you use a little bit of a different type of glass than I do, which gives you a different color palette. And I think the way that you integrate flame working into that, and you happened upon a lot of color, correct? That was one of your happenstances that led you in the direction that you're in today. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm unique to just a few of us. I'm working in about a 104 to 106 coefficient of expansion. That's my furnace glass, which is relatively unique. Lamp workers tend to work in that coefficient, but they're not gathering it out of the furnace. Some of the California glass blowers, Orient and Flume being one, I'm not sure about Rick Satava, but Stephen Lundberg, they formulated higher coefficient of glass, and I believe it was around the iridescent glass that they were all doing in the 60s and 70s. So that's basically the color palette that I got used to for 7 years. And I also ended up with a lot of these canes of glass that were hand pulled while I worked, not while I worked at Simon Pierce. Orient and Flume. Some of the canes that I pulled, but one of my coworkers had passed on, and he had amassed 20 years of this collection of rod pulls and canes and base glass. And I purchased it from his family because when I started my shop, I decided to go in that same formula, so it was compatible with what I was doing. My base glass is formulated by Lewis Olson from Corning Batch Company. Like I said, it's in that 104 to 106 COE, which is theoretically about 10 points higher than a majority of the rest of the glass blowers. It's softer. It's got a long working temperature out of the furnace, which allows for that torch work to happen. If you're going to be sitting out of the furnace applying molten glass cane work to pieces, it's very helpful that your glass can take that without wanting to crack in 20 seconds. It lends itself very well to the furnace because it's a little bit softer. Glory holes typically run hotter. My furnace temperature is 2,130 degrees, but that's also my working temperature. That's basically my glory hole. So having a softer working glass means I don't have to be in a 2,300 degree furnace to get it molten and malleable to where I need it. There are pros and cons to working out of a furnace. You have to be a little more careful when you're adding color to the surface or frit or chips to add your color and texture. You can't just throw it right back in the furnace. You have to slowly integrate that so it heats and doesn't want to pop off into your color. But being an electric furnace doesn't burn colors off. It's a neutral atmosphere. It's always at the same temperature to the exact degree I want it. So it works really well with the powdered enamels and the colors that I use. And so that you're right. That kind of was also instrumental in which direction or path I was going to take as a glass blower. It's not a great blowing glass. So if you were to look at my friend Nick, who's next to me, who does a lot of, or Simon Pierce, form blowing, they blow quick shapes and then they want to, add a handle or flare out a lip. That glass is formulating to blowing. Mine is much more of a sculptural paperweight. It's meant to be soft. And so it's a little trickier when you come to actually wanting to blow really thin work. You got to work fairly fast, or it's softer. It wants to pull back into its shape and be a little thicker. So it's just a different way of working, but I've become used to it. I enjoy it at this point. When I go work with other glass, I'm like, man, this stuff's stiff. How do you work with this stuff? So, it's all what you're used to. And like I said, it's certainly versatile enough that I could make pretty much anything I want, but it is kind of geared toward this type of work that I do. I largely work out of the furnace. I have a yoke and a torch, a handheld Bethlehem torch that I do a majority of my decorative work with. I do have a bench torch for doing lamp working and kind of encasing paperweights. If I'm going to do a lamp work encased paperweight, I do have a GTT bench torch now, but most of the time I'm gathering out of the furnace on a pipe all the time and applying surface decoration as I go. And then it's sometimes encased and sometimes left on the surface.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, so you kind of already shared about your path on how you got to where you were, and I can imagine there was some challenges with all the moving and all the decisions, and certainly starting a business as an independent artist while having a growing family. So maybe can you share some of the challenges that you had and maybe like ways that you overcame them, or any thought processes to help other people maybe going through the same challenges?
Sure, that's great, and I think really important to think about. I actually had to sit down and think about it to try to. I'll see if I can be clear. I think the hardest thing for me, and it really depends on everybody's personality, but my first 12 years of glass experience was working with other people, both collaboratively and environmentally. And the first very blatant thing to working by yourself is being by yourself all day long. And not only is it the struggles, if you will, of running a business, of responsibly running a business, and all the fiscal stuff and all the paperwork and the absolutely everything about running a business, but even the making glass component, I'd always worked with other people. And so it's not so much the physical challenge of making glass. That was relatively easy, other than bringing yourself a foot or a handle or something. That takes a little bit of practice and can be done. But the mental aspects of being by yourself all the time was, my wife will tell you, again, thankfully, I have a really great home life, and I look forward to going home at the end of the day. I'm really lucky, and I did, because I had a daughter, and now that she's gone, I look forward to going home and seeing my wife and my dogs and cats. But being by yourself all day has its own weight. And so staying busy helps, obviously. But some of those challenges can be motivation, staying motivated, being disciplined to just make something every day. And that's pretty much my default when I get a little nuts and just wander around like, what do I do today? It's like, just make something out of glass. It'll center yourself. You know what you're doing. Make cardinals, make pumpkins, make snowmen, whatever it is. That's a good focus point. But just the whole aspect of being alone, that was probably it still is one of the most difficult challenges. Being creative, being unique in a world of, I don't even know how many people make glass, but there are a lot. And trying to be unique, not just from a marketing perspective, but from your own stylistic, not wanting to copy other people. I think you said you just had a discussion with Anne. I'm assuming it might be Anne Conlon But we have this discussion a lot about the definition of an artist, and we kind of go back and forth, and she's pretty hard on me about this because I don't think of myself as an artist. I like the term craftsman. I like the term artisan. I really like the process of taking molten glass and all the steps to making a piece really well done and getting it into the annealing oven. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what I'm doing, but for me, it's about that process and doing it efficiently, cleanly, and well, not so much what I'm making. And I don't feel like I have creative bursts of, oh my God, this piece is calling to me. I have to, create this. It's what have I made? How can I tweak it? What has somebody brought in for an idea? Oh, look at that cardinal sitting on the branch. I wonder if I could make that out of glass. So there's technical creativity and proficiency required in a lot of pieces, but I don't think of myself as a particularly creative person, but I have 27 years of practical glass experience and enough curiosity and knowledge of wanting to bring, not bring it to life, but to see if I can do it. And it's those technical challenges that I guess inspire me to do what I do. But being unique, being creative, being motivated, those are all significant challenges, I think, especially when you're working by yourself. And the best thing I can say, I'm not a great person to do this, is my wife's told me for years to have a schedule and just make yourself a schedule. And well, again, what I'm not good about is building into that production schedule time to be creative or time to make something that you've never done before. And I will speak to this. I don't know if you're going to lead to it, but one of my own significant challenges is kind of pushing my own envelope. With the experiences that I've had and being relatively proficient, I stay pretty safe. I don't I don't like being scared with glass. I don't really like pushing my own envelopes and, oh my God, what if I break something? It's like that really governs my mind. I hate to lose a single piece after all this time. And so I don't always allow myself that necessary challenge process to work through mistakes to getting to a new level, unless I'm going to take a class at Corning, like a professional development class where you're in a completely safe environment with permission for a week to do nothing but these new challenges. And that's kind of been my way around that. And I would highly recommend that as anyone wanting to learn, wanting to grow, wanting to learn motivation, creativity, go take a professional class. It took me 18 years to give myself permission to do that. And I get goosebumps. You can probably see them from the very first time I gave myself permission to do that. I came back so energized, so amped up about new bursts of creativity. I can't tell you how, even if you think you know it all, which I do not know half of what there is to know, or a tenth, it's so good to be able to break out of your own, walls sometime and just be creative. And so that's been my way of doing that. Again, I went all over the place, but
So basically, I've been writing down questions as you're talking, and then you're literally going through and answering them.
Me too.
I wanted to ask you about how you create new stuff and what inspires you. And unlike Anne, who seems to have a very artist brain, it kind of seems like you're taking your foundations and then you're figuring out how to apply that to new things, correct? Like you already make birds and then you're seeing birds out in real life and you're thinking about how to add on that.
That's a great way to yes, that's exactly it in a nutshell. It's like I'm a product of my two experiences, and I was extremely fortunate, and it was all over the place. I give credit to both of those places of building who I am today and the background. But it's a lot of tweaking, I guess, is how my creative process works. It's either somebody comes in and asks me, hey, I see that you make this. Do you think you could make this? Or, occasionally it's flipping through my bird watching guide, or a new, bird lands on the bird feeder. I was like, I wonder if I could make that out of glass. Would it be sellable? And it's those little tweaks. I make a snowy owl. I bet I could make a great horned owl. And would that be, collectible? And it's different enough in the way that you do it with the little tiny tweaks that it's a slightly different process. Even though the foundation is there, it's a new creative direction. But that's a great way of how that comes to me. It's either a friend, a family member, a visitor to my studio, a book, a catalog, something that was done 100 years ago, and I was like, I wonder if I could tweak that and make it my own.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was what you did when you found that you were in a slump. Maybe you just weren't feeling it or you were having trouble get to work. It sounds like making a schedule is helpful for you. And it sounds that taking classes and getting out of your element to do something new is helpful. Is there anything else that you found as a tool in your toolbox to get out of a slump?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question to answer because it really, especially now as we're dealing with COVID, there's a lot of variables, and it could just be mood, it can be weather, it can be the market. So, and again, when you're by yourself, and I should also say that I'm extremely lucky in that my wife has a really good job and insurance, so I don't have the burden of being a sole provider, and that in and of itself is a huge lift, and so that affords me. I certainly can't just fluff it. It's expensive to do what I do what we do. And you don't go into glassblowing kind of lightheartedly. It's expensive to start. It's expensive to maintain. So just breaking even, I have $30,000 a year in expenses, as a lot of us do. So you have to not only make that much glass, you have to sell that much just to break even. 30 to 36 grand is my break even point of that's what I need to, and you got to take into the galleries, cut into that as well. So if they're taking 50%, that's 60 to 70,000. I'm not going to say it's a fairy tale just because my wife has a job insurance, but it's so important and so helpful. Back to your question. It really depends on the day, and I should have a schedule, but I don't necessarily. But what I do have is a furnace that's on all the time. And I definitely have my days where I'll sit at the desk and I'm not motivated. But there's always something to do, right? It could be dusting the shelves. All of my pieces practically are cold work. And since I don't currently have a cold worker, I've got 5 to 10 hours of that. I've got marketing that I'm trying to learn and figure out between Instagram and social media, Facebooks, and all that stuff. There's website development. I do a lot of that. So there's always something to do. The trouble I have had over the years, and I'm getting better at, is giving myself permission to do those other 50 to 60% of your day that's not making glass, when glass is the one thing that you can produce that makes you money. And so that's been one of the biggest challenges that I've grappled with as someone who just wants to be a worker. I would be just as happy still working for somebody else. I want to go into my studio and just make glass for 6 to 8 hours a day, call it a day, go home, have a glass of wine, and go to bed. That would be ideal. But no, I decided to start a glass business, and holy crap, there's a lot to it. And I didn't do it naively. I knew going in, but I'll say it again, holy crap. There's a lot of work to running a business, and there's always something to do. And so if I get down and out, I just go do something that's and it could be sweeping the floor or using your shop vac or rearranging your canes or your tools, or anything is helpful because it all needs doing. And so that's what I would tell people to do. If you're in a slump and maybe not feeling creative in the glass, either make yourself go into that glass if you've got your furnace door open and your glory hole on, and just make something, even if it's tumblers or ornaments or something you've made 1,000 times, because you will get a little bit better at it. Or make something new that you've never tried before, and I think you'll find that you totally come out about inspired, like, wow, that was really cool, I'm glad I did that. Or just do something else that needs doing for your business, whether it's QuickBooks or dusting off your shelves or, packing an order for a customer. There's always something that needs doing. It's usually enough to take you, out of your mindset that you're currently in. Not always, we all have our days, especially I think now when we're all wondering, I wonder if I'm going to be able to keep the doors open, if anybody's going to buy my work. It's a very quick path that can lead you down into really tough places, and it's a struggle. And again, I'm fortunate with the life that I have that at the end of the day, I knock on my wooden head, I have that to fall back on. I'm very fortunate to have the life I do. We don't worry about our every paycheck. We don't have hardly any debt other than my business expenses. So I'm in a really good place, and I have my days for sure. And especially being by yourself with the kind of personality I have, it's tough. You got to work through it, but I'm very fortunate with the life I have. I don't take it for granted. And if I need to go home and hug my dog and just, have a beer, I do. And usually when you come back the next day, the sun's out and I got a beautiful view, and you do it, you get back on the horse and make some glass the next day.
Yeah, that was beautiful. So maybe we're all kind of struggling right now because of COVID. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about how COVID changed things for you and how it left you feeling, and maybe how you're getting through this pandemic we're all dealing with.
Okay. Yeah. And first, please, I hope you're all listening. You're safe out there. That's the number one thing we can do is be patient and be safe and be rational. State of Vermont, we're very lucky in the area of the country that we live in. We're not in New York City in a high rise with no good shopping, or local farmers markets to go to, or stuck in a building with thousands of other people. I have a 1 mile commute. I basically socially distance. I'm in a small community. We're all taking this relatively seriously, and we've had relatively few cases per capita. So that being said, extremely fortunate position. It obviously changed everything right off the bat. All my shows, all my tours, all the galleries closed in February and early March. I wasn't even technically allowed to come into the studio. And so, I had a financial cushion because I've always tried to be very responsible with money, and I don't like having debt. So I keep a certain amount in my bank account for if the furnace goes. You know how much it is to build a furnace. So I try to keep that much in my checking account as an emergency at all times, and that's my 0 point. So I had a bit of a cushion to weather some of the storm. I did get some unemployment money. I got some PPP money. Not a lot, but it was enough to kind of keep things going for a couple of months while I was trying to figure it out. When the doors opened back up for at least those of us that don't have employees to be able to come to work, I was pretty much here immediately and still making stuff, or at least coming to the studio every day. And again, I'm by myself, so I don't have to worry about passing anything to anybody else. And I pretty much just go from my home to my studio. So relatively self-contained. Some of the challenges then are, okay, if the galleries and the shows and the tours are canceled or closed, how to market the work. I've had a website that is functional. It's not ideal still. I'm still working on the aesthetic, but it is a method to sell glass. I've been trying over the last couple of years to get better with social media. It's not something that's natural for me. Dom, you and I have spoken about that in the past. You're really good about being very regular with your posts. You seem to be, if not natural about it, a lot more disciplined about it. I'm much more haphazard. It's painstaking for me because I'm just enough of a marketer from a business perspective to do it as a fiscally responsive business person, but I don't enjoy it. I have it's a very hard dynamic of marketing yourself for, hey, look at me and look at my work. And, still like, it'd be really great if you bought this cardinal and this pumpkin right now. And trying to figure that dynamic out has been very challenging for me because But there's a lot of good teachers out there. There's a lot of, within our League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, Vermont Craft Council, fellow artisans that are better about it or more natural about it, have developed um, plans to do this. So I've done my homework, and I've taken some classes, and I've taken a lot of notes, and I've tried to at least integrate that as a necessary part of running a business in today's society. There's, especially the younger audience, is much more of a point and click buy now. And so tapping into that at least a little bit. I think my customers still are a little more the email, Facebook users, but knowing that, realizing that, and trying to steer at least part of my business into that direction has been, it's, and again, the way I look at it is a new skill set. I don't love it, but it's something new. And because I do everything myself, if this is an aspect I can learn and at least come to terms with on some level and be comfortable with it. And some things that have been very helpful to me are in some recent classes are be genuine, be true to yourself, be consistent, show things of value, show things about your life. And so that's what I'm trying to coalesce into some sort of a body of social media marketing at this point. Is how do I exactly do that? I'm getting closer, but that's important. I don't like feeling fake about the social media part of it. But if I can offer something of value to people and look at it that way, and my customers and friends and family who are out there, fan base or whatever, find value in what I'm sharing, then that would be a huge weight lifted, and I would feel much more comfortable about doing it. So I guess that's another challenge that we spoke about earlier, that COVID has really, thankfully, I was in a position where I was already doing some of it and working towards that anyway. This has kind of put it into high gear and really brought it to the forefront of being, if not necessary, very important part of our business. So driving traffic to my own website now, as opposed to really pushing the other galleries and shows. And so some of the galleries are open. They are asking for work now. So that's been great. And I am making quite a bit of production. Another thing I should speak about that didn't stop with COVID is the memorial work that I do. I know you do that as well, Dom. That's been a significant portion of my income for probably the last 3 years, for working 3.5. I've done over 1,000 pieces now. I think I just checked, and that did not slow down in the least. And in fact, it ramped up during COVID. I had the people I work with. I gave them permission to, up my production a little bit. So that between the grant PPP money and the memorial pieces, that was enough to stay busy. And now that the galleries are reopening at least a little bit, I've been able to stay making glass pretty much through, other than the first month or two, through the whole process.
So I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for sharing about how you felt about posting on social media. I think it's really cool to hear somebody's perspective when I'm looking at it from the outside. And I guess I can see that from our previous conversations, but I think you are really good at it. I mean, your work speaks for itself, and you're always posting really nice pictures of everything you do. So that's, as a millennial, that kind of checks all the boxes off on what I find as entertaining for social media. So I think you do a really good job. And I just think it's nice to hear that you don't necessarily always feel super confident about what you're doing, because maybe other people are feeling that same battle and they just can't take that step to just put it out there. And you're doing it all. And I think it looks great. We'll make sure to connect your page to all of our stuff when we post this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's very helpful to hear, because I have been working on the photography a little bit. And again, there's classes and workshops and people, especially in our area, that are teaching this either for free or for a relatively small cost, and it's been very valuable to me. And just, there's one person in particular that she's so positive, that she's always saying, it's okay wherever you are right now. We're all on a journey, and don't beat yourself up for not being at this place or having your stuff in order to this point. Be happy with where you are. Be comfortable. Do the best you can. And all that stuff it's easy for me to tell other people, but it's really hard um, to remember that from the inside, especially when you're by yourself all the time. And I'm not a person that needs so many likes. I'm only doing it from a very practical perspective of, trying to honestly generate some sales and share. Obviously, I'm an educator from the way past. My doors are always open. I encourage visitors, and people are always welcome to come and watch me work. Glass is fascinating to watch, even for us that make glass. I could go to any shop at any time with 27 years and be totally fascinated at whatever's going to happen out of that furnace, because you don't know. It's a magical, incredibly fun thing to watch, regardless of someone else's, experience or length in it. It's just really cool, and I still find that enjoyment. So I don't take that for granted, and so I try to remember that after doing this as long as I have. My doors are always open. I encourage people to come in. You can sit and drink a tea, a coffee, a beer, or whatever, watch me work, ask me questions. I enjoy teaching what I have learned, and I still have a long way to go, and we all have our own struggles. So if I can be of help to other people, that's awesome, because I've certainly gotten help from all of you guys. So I love the collaborative and the networking piece. I've done a lot of work in my area with glass guilds and artist guilds, and the biggest piece of it for me was networking and being not necessarily collaborative physically, but to know we're all trying to do this and to help each other. And whether it's help the network, help market, give a physical or virtual hug if someone's having a bad day. It's all really important to know that we're all struggling with all of these, aspects of, even though they might vary in magnitude or style, we're all kind of dealing with it in a bell curve, on a spectrum. And some of us have better strengths than others, and we can all just help each other throughout all of this, I think. Along with that, my friend Nick Kekik from Suga Studios is now in my building for the last, say, 2.5 years. And that's been huge. We don't get to collaborate a lot, although I do help him out and he helps me out. But just having another glassblower in the building to share a dropped piece or a struggle, or dude, I just sold X amount of glass, I'm feeling really great. And having someone to share those highs and lows is huge for me, especially, again, going back to that, being by yourself and with the personality I have, being kind of introverted and intrinsic there. But so having someone to share that has been really helpful.
A lot of the things in what you just said are why we wanted to start this podcast.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's a great idea.
What do you got for us, Christina? Any questions?
I don't really have any questions. Like you said, every question that I was writing down as we were going was just like, oh, and he answered that. But I just think that, especially like for me, I loathe the social media aspect of the glass world. If I could just be in my own little bubble and just focus on glass forever, that would be perfect. So it was really nice to see someone I think that your social media is awesome, and just seeing that you also struggle with that feels good to hear. And I'm sure a lot of other people will relate to that too.
Yeah, we started a local group. It started out as we called it a coffee clatch. Robert McBride, who founded Rockingham Arts and Museum Project, probably close to 30 years ago. We've been networking since I've been home, 15 years, and we've started a little group of local artists in different mediums, meeting once a month just to network. And usually it was around Open Studio Tour in May every year, and how do we coordinate. But it's since COVID, we've become this little pod and especially in the last, I would say, 2 months, how do we help each other through this social media navigational, sometimes kind of nightmare, or this feeling of it's incredibly overwhelming and intimidating if you've not done any of it. And what's been helpful is that we are all on different levels of, and I find that I'm kind of in the middle, or, maybe I've been trying to do this for a couple of years, and to hear that, wow, what I'm doing actually looks good, because I'm still feeling like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I try to take a good picture, but is that, should the plant be in it? Should it be a window? Should it be a photo booth? What do people want? And so I really don't know. And it comes down to personal aesthetic, I guess, and trying to do different things, but it's been very helpful, and we're all just trying to help each other out. And I think that's really the answer to it. And and one of the reasons to be in New England and be where we are, I think, again, I've left and come back, I don't know how many times, but I truly love this area of the country. I think we tend to be fairly open-minded, fairly supportive of all the same, we all differ a little, but we have a lot more things in common than things we're different with in this part of the country, I think. And I can't really see being anywhere else and being as successful, to use that scary term, as I am, or certainly not to be as happy and content.
That was so perfect. That would be a perfect ending. I don't know if do you have
Oh,
anything else that you want to add? That was so good.
Yeah, no, this has been great. Thank you. I please, if you've got questions about anything, we can probably switch the order of it all. But if you have any questions about my work or what I do, please fire them out.
I think that was so great. It was really cool to hear your perspective. Thanks for being so just honest. It was nice.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
And we're not lying about your Instagram. I sent Christina a link to your Instagram. I was like, this is who we're going to interview next week, just so you can check it out. And she's like, oh, this is awesome.
I was looking at him this morning going, oh, man, because you're supposed to look at your profile and see the 9 images in a square. I'm like, I don't know if those make any kind of sense. And geez, I don't know. But and I've been hearing, you got to have pictures of yourself in your studio. And before it was, no, they all need to be uniform. And, so I'm kind of winging it, but we'll see.
There's that weird balance of where people want to know everything about you, but actually you need to be professional, and the algorithm changes as soon as you figure it out.
Yeah, no, seriously. Same, and like search engine stuff for the website, I've been doing a lot. That's been another thing with COVID that I alluded to a little bit, but I do have someone that helped me develop it, but I do a lot of the website myself and the back end stuff, and trying to make it, SEO, the search engine optimization, and there's a lot to it, and it changes all the time. And at first it was like, make sure we all link each other, and that was a big thing in the back. And my old site used to just have links to every glassblower I knew and every organization, and now it's all page titles and keywords and meta tags, and that's all going to be put in on the back end. So there's a lot to it. It does constantly change. But I was thinking just again this morning about, I guess my vision of the website in the last month has been, I need to be found by all these random people. But then I realized, well, wait a minute, if I've got X amount of followers on Facebook and X amount of friends and X amount of Instagram people, there's a body of people right there. And they're going to find me through my posts. So it's not so much about the random feelers are out there as having a site that you're happy with once people get there, because you can get them there, and then trying to make that as aesthetically pleasing and easy to navigate. And so that's where I'm kind of focused right now, is tweaking the website to be elegant and efficient and pleasant and not too busy. So that's a current struggle right now, is getting the website to where I want it, because I think, especially where we don't know if the galleries are all going to close or if we're going to have shows and tours next year. The virtual ones for me they've been fun to do, and they've been more educational, I think, for the viewers, but they're nowhere near, at least for me, sales-wise, what the Sunapee Craft Fair is. That was a huge revenue loss. Not that I can't take it, but if you lose a $10,000 sale, you lose a $10,000 sale. That's a pretty big chunk. So if I could get that out of the website, then, so that's kind of the mode of thinking, is how to kind of streamline things. And again, making it, being content with it being, having it show value, but having it also represent me as not only a person, but as a craftsman. And so that's my current struggle, is getting there. And it's functional and it's good. It's not quite where I want it, but I'm not a person that's easily satisfied with anything. I'm what do I call myself? I'm not a perfectionist, but I am an expectationalist, mostly of myself. I'm very easy with others, but I'm really hard on myself. And others would argue I'm a perfectionist, but I call it I have certain expectations of myself, mostly making glass, but pretty much with everything I do, that I should be this good. I'm not allowed to make mistakes, but we're human and we do. So I guess the older I get, I don't know if I'm okay with it, but I try to brush it away a little bit easier and not hold on to it too long. But
you just hit the nail on the
forgive
head.
yourself for your mistakes and just do the best you can. Be happy with what you're doing. Be happy with your life. That's the best thing that I could tell anybody is, whenever I have friends or myself or whatever, that if you're depressed, just find something in your day that makes you happy and do it. And if it's hugging your dog or making glass or reading a book or having a cup of tea, just do that. And you can work yourself out of a lot of stuff. Find something that makes you happy and find a way to do it. And then really try to be content with wherever you are. And that's something that I'm constantly, that's a mantra that I'm trying to use for myself. Tai Chi has been very helpful for centering and just I've been doing it for, I don't know how many, 5 years. And so taking 10 minutes to do the short form about centering and breath and relaxing is huge. And I'm not good about doing it every day, but just try to be centered and take a deep breath once in a while, and it's all going to be okay. Or life lessons that I'm still trying to learn.
So good.
Awesome. I love that.
I think that's a good.
I'll just zip it then. That was
good. Thank you so
talking.
much. I think we all needed to hear that.
Yeah, definitely.
Christine and I are the only ones that listen to our podcast. You just helped us.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me and taking the time out of your day to call me up. That's great. I hope you're both happy and safe and well.
Totally.
Keep making glass. Keep posting.
Well, there you do.
Keep posting on social media.
Yeah. And we'll make sure.
Even if it hurts.
Which it does sometimes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Connected in Glass. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information on the artists we interview and for updates on the podcast. You can find Chris Sherwin's work on Facebook and Instagram at Sherwin Art Glass.